King P here,
And Steely07.
and welcome to another episode of This Week in Metropolis.
On this week's show, we have talented comic book artist Ben Nunn. He'll be here to talk about his work on the Secret Protectors comic and his other projects that he's working on.
He talks a lot to us about his favourite comic book artists and what's influenced him throughout his career. Hope you enjoy it.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to welcome you to This Week in Metropolis.
Well, Ben, thanks for joining us on our show. Much appreciated. Tell us a bit about yourself and how you got started into doing your art.
So I'm Ben. I'm a comic book artist. I've done all sorts of little bits and pieces, really. I think I started, according to my mum at least, I started drawing when I was 2, but that doesn't really quite count, I don't think. It's only when you really, so there's a difference between when you what I would do is I'd get my VHS player when Dragon Ball Z was on, and I'd pause it and try and draw cool frames that I got on the tape recording. But obviously, VHS being what it was, you could hardly tell what the hell was going on. It was just this pixely, blurry, just random squares of rubbish everywhere. So you had to really try and find the right moment. But that was kind of how I got started. When I was really into something, I'd draw about it, and I'd just try and copy things and all that. And I just always ended up doing things like that, really. I've got ADHD, so in class in schools, I would just fill up the side of my notebook with all these drawings. And then when teachers told me that I wasn't allowed to, that was when I'd just get a bit disruptive in class, to be honest. I just wouldn't have that outlet. So I'd become just a really crappy student and just kind of annoy every teacher. And looking back, I do feel really bad for those teachers because it was very unreasonable. It wasn't a cool thing to do. But yeah, it's good. That's always been a bit of an outlet, I guess. But yeah, it's only in the last in 2017, Adam, who I do Secret Protectors with, one of the comics I work on. He approached me in 2017, and it was after we finished. I think we finished issue 1, and that was when I decided actually I want to try and take this a bit more seriously, not just comics, but kind of art in general. So I tried to do more courses and read more books and all that sort of stuff, and just kind of study more consistently. That's not really working out very well. I'm very inconsistent, but that was kind of, I think that on some level I'd almost consider that when I really started drawing, even though I'd been drawing regularly up until then, and I'd say probably better than someone who wasn't sort of sketching in the margin all the time. And I'd drawn various web comics and things just for fun over the years, but that was when I decided, actually, instead of just winging it and hoping I get better by osmosis and by just practicing the same stuff, drawing a million anime eyes, it doesn't only get you so far. So that was kind of when I just decided this is where I'm going to dedicate to improving and try and make a go of it, really.
What did you feel, you said you wanted to sort of study more about it. Was there anything missing? When you looked at your stuff, did you think, oh, I'd really like to know this thing or how to do this better? What was your focus and such?
It's interesting. I mean, there's this thing in a lot of creative things, especially it's art, music, anything like that, where you know that there's something missing, but you're not advanced enough to figure out what it is. And so you're looking at it and you're thinking why doesn't this look like this piece of art from one of your sort of favorite artists? And so you're looking at it and you're like, I've done everything that I know that I think is right, but where do I go from there? And that's kind of the struggle, really, is figuring out. I mean, obviously you can do courses and you can read books and all that to figure out general things, but it always feels like, even now, it feels like there's someone could say something to me oh, why don't you just do this? And then suddenly it just click into place and all the gears would start turning. And I'd be like, wow, I'm actually satisfied with this now. Yeah. But I don't know if that ever happens. I don't know. I mean, the artists I've spoken to, no one's ever really satisfied with their own work. There's a lot of imposter syndrome, I'd say.
Exactly.
Even among the big boys and girls, of course.
Who you mentioned that there. Who are your kind of influences as you've got into it more? Is there certain artists or comic book artists that you look at and go, I like that. That's kind of what my style, or I want to kind of mold my style around that.
Yeah, it's interesting because the first comics I started reading were the old Batman Superman comics.
Yeah.
I pick them up in like a Sainsbury's or something, and then I remember one day they just stopped carrying them, and so I was very disappointed. And then I started picking up the Spider-Man ones, and this was like I don't know how much of the audience is in the UK or elsewhere, but we have or then at least we had this weird system where they just kind of collect random recent sort of comics in these. I don't even know what the term would be, in these kind of weirdly specific formats. So you'd have like 2 Spider-Man stories in one comic, but they weren't part of the same storyline.
Right.
It was a bit of a, looking back, a bit of a confusing one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bit of a mess.
But, yeah, so I started picking those up, and it was there was a lot of art from John Romita Jr. in those, and I think there was something about his art that just really, really captured my imagination. Because if you look at what you consider like comic book art, like if you Googled comic book art, you get Jack Kirby, you'd get Jim Lee, you get Rob Liefeld somewhere in between, and sort of timeline wise. And like there are obviously a lot of other people in there that have been very kind of influential, but you do get you get the heavy blacks, you get the cross hatching, you get all that sort of stuff. But the way John Romita Jr. did things, even on a kind of, or does things, obviously he's still working, but even on like an anatomical level and like anatomy, shading, just everything he does is just, it's unique to him. Like if you saw a drawing of John Romita Jr., like okay, yeah, that's John Romita Jr. Even if you don't know much about comic art. And obviously, you can do that with a lot of artists, but with a lot of them, you have to know more about it.
Sure.
And so, being able to be like, "Oh wow, yeah, that's different," that kind of really sparked something in me, I think.
Do you strive then to, like, on that level, to be unique or identifiable? Is there a subconscious with your stuff where you're thinking you've got a signature way of doing something? If you know what I mean, is there a conscious, oh, that's how I do it, and I want to keep that's how I do it because that signifies my work? Do you think
that is a good question, Matt? I think the struggle is always for me that there's a difference, and it's a blurry line between something that is your style and something that you don't know how to do properly.
Yeah, but then becomes your style, possibly.
Yeah. But you get a lot of young artists, and I was like this when I was sort of in my teens, that like sort of say in an art class, or if they're getting, like if someone asks me for advice, and they'll show me something, and I'll say, oh, I don't know, maybe the ears look weird. Maybe they've done ears in a kind of strange way. Maybe they're too high or too low, or there's like a strange face shape or something.
Yeah.
And I'll say to them like, oh, this looks a bit off. Like maybe you want to try, studying some skulls or do some anatomy or looking at something like that.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh no, that's my style.
Right.
And that can be valid. I mean, there's lots of people out there that do really great stuff with really unique styles. But I think it comes down to, if you can't not do it, then it's not your style. It's just what you're stuck in. Like if
Sure.
you can't, if you can't do in those examples, like if you couldn't draw a head with with ears in the right place, then it's not your style. You're
getting it wrong. As such, yeah.
Exactly, yeah. You sort of have to know. You have to know the rules to break them. It's kind of one of those things, and there are a lot of rules, so it takes a while.
Yeah.
Me and Matt have both got copies of The Secret Protectors. We've both contributed to the fundraisers and things like that, and it's such a great comic book. And I know Ben's children are a little bit older than mine, so I'm sure you've shown your children, Matt. So it's fantastic, and you look through. I think it's currently. I've recently spoken to Adam, and he told me that it's pretty much nearly there now with the new issues that you've got coming out.
Yeah, with volume 1. So so what we did, obviously we started with issue 1, and the goal was we'd make issue 1, and then we'd put it over to a Kickstarter, and we'd have the issue 1 done. So it's like, because on Kickstarter, there's a lot of comic stuff on there, but a lot of things on Kickstarter, especially tech things, but also comic things, just don't end up getting made. And so you contribute to something that just never happens. Like something reaches its goal, like sometimes things will exceed their goals by like leaps and bounds, and for some reason they just won't happen. Yeah. And so we thought if we can have this foundation of something that already exists, so we can already say that you can trust us, we've done this, like this is, we want, like our first Kickstarter was for issue 1 and 2. So we can say issue 1's done. So fund us issue 1 and 2, and we're halfway there. Like you're going to get issue 1 no matter what, even if like, God willing, nothing happens to either of us. But even if something were to happen to one of us, you're still going to be getting something.
Yeah, you must be really proud of it, though.
I am. Although that said, there's something that Adam always says, which is that so when we're back in the before times, before all this stuff, when we were at Comic-Cons, when we were sitting at a table, we'd have like issue 1 and 2, and we had a few of issue 3, and I'd always sort of, I'd show them issue 1. I was like, why don't you look at the art in like issue 2 or 3? Because like I've come along since then, and like, oh no, I don't really want spoilers. But then in my head, I'm like, but you won't like this. It's not as good. It's like, and most people don't even like see the difference really. Like, no. Well, maybe they see the difference, but if they saw the first one, they wouldn't think, oh, that's rubbish. But they, but yeah, I mean, they're fine with it. But I've got this kind of insecurity about it, which actually led me to. I don't know if you guys know this. When we did our Kickstarter for Volume 1, which is issue 1 to 4, I actually redid like a whole load of issue 1, and so I did a whole lot of that. I've actually got some of the tester copies up here. So yeah, we've got the issue 1 there. Well, nice. Volume 1, sorry. Yeah, nice chunky one there. It's actually got a spine. I was very happy about that. So yeah, I've got some of.
I look forward to
issue 1 reworked.
Yeah. That'd be really cool. But it's the same as anything, and I'm sure, Matt, you'll agree, even for us as podcasters, we look back on where we started 18 months ago or so, and we kind of can't believe where we're at now. And I think it's the same as anything. You always look back and go, oh, God, that was us then.
I can't believe I did that. But at the time, it was part. Well, it's just part of the learning curve, isn't it, more than anything?
But unlike Ben, we're not going to go and redo season 1 of our podcast.
Oh, by me! We record it with all the same words, but like with different inflections and things. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that would be a bit of a nightmare.
Exactly. But secret protectors aside, which I'm sure you've put a hell of a lot of work into, have you got other projects that you're doing at the moment as well?
Yeah, I mean, I've got a couple of Kickstarters in the works actually, but I can't really say much about them at the moment. One of them's a kind of swashbuckling pirate adventure that kind of spans generations and all that sort of stuff, which I'm really excited about. The other one, possibly on a totally different level, possibly like an animatic pitch for an animated show. That I've got a friend who's got some contacts in some animation studios, and we might try and pitch something there, which is exciting. I mean, I'm the kind of person that sort of tries to grab all these opportunities, but has no faith that they'll work out necessarily. Well, no, I have faith. I have faith in the people. I have faith in my work and their work and all that. But I don't I try not to pin my hopes on it. I think that's a better way of putting it. Because when it's something like, especially making like a TV show, that's all we can do is do our best. But aside from that, I've done a lot of stuff on like freelancing sites. So I'll get people who get in touch with me saying, "Oh, it's my friend's birthday. Do you want can I do like a couple of pages of a comic or something?" Which are always fun. And I've also done some of those with a friend. He was trying to kind of start a little business of like gift comics for people, which was really cool. And that ended up transitioning into this this little. I think it was 3 pages. This little story about a world where everyone is a zebra, and they're all sort of different colors, and it's told through social media posts. So there's like ZooBook, which is Facebook, and like Twitter, which is Twitter, and things like that. Yeah, I mean, it was a really cool idea. He's a really cool writer and a really lovely guy. But the most interesting thing was that it's all kind of told in the background. So like you'll have a character taking a selfie, but the actual story is happening behind them. So it's not people taking pictures themselves. It's this kind of, so you'll read it through and you get to the end and you'll be like, oh, hang on, like those two. And then you'll go back and so that was a really fun one to do. Wow. That's so hopefully it was originally a plan for I can't remember which competition it was. It was originally planned to be submitted for a competition, but my buddy who I was working with got the date wrong, so so we finished it about a week after the deadline.
Oh no!
Unfortunately, so we're sort of trying to figure out where that can go at the moment.
One of the questions I've not questions even, but one of the pieces of work that I've seen on your Instagram page is the ones that I'm assuming it's drawings of yourself in an animated form, where you'll do like a little sketch and you're talking about certain scenarios. I think there's one about it being a new year and the countdown before. Some of them are really cool. Like, what was your inspiration behind that?
That's Guff Canyon, which is this in the vein of, like, I don't know if you know, like Blue Chair and like Sarah Scribbles and stuff like that. So these little kind of 4-panel strips, webtoons kind of thing. Just a little funny one-liner almost sort of thing. Mm-hmm. You know, like a comedy strip. I don't know why I don't know why I need to explain it. I don't know why I'm explaining it so badly. But other than that, yeah, just sort of in that kind of vein. Because I kind of wanted to mix up my style a little bit, and even within it, there's a lot of different styles that I end up going through to get to where I am now with it. But it started at, I think, December last year. I was thinking I really want to try and kind of make something of a kind of like a weekly web strip, or like a few times a week or something. So I decided that come January 1st, I would do a comic a day for 100 days. And I knew that was unrealistic, but I thought if we aim high, we can figure it out on the way. So I did a comic a day for probably about 2 months or so. And then I sort of decided, okay, we'll move it to just weekdays. So then I had a bit of a tiny bit of a backlog in the middle, and then it kind of fell off quite a bit. But I did get to 100. I think I'm at 105 or so now, and that's been really fun. I think one of the best things about it, other than just the fact that I just get to make silly jokes and things, and even if they're stupid, at least I get to draw some interesting things. Yeah. But one of the best things about it is that I don't know if you guys experience this as creatives yourselves, is that when you've put yourself in the mindset to try and think of ideas regularly, it then just starts flowing a bit more naturally. Yeah. And obviously that's not a constant stream. You can obviously have blocks sometimes, but I just found that, I mean, I've got like notes on my phone that are just like pages and pages long essentially. And I have gotten to the point where I've run out of the good ones on that notes list. There's some really stupid stuff on there, like marginal tax rates was one of them. I'm like, no, don't make a comic about that. And so, but yeah, I mean, that's been really cool. That's been a really cool one to do.
You know what? In terms of, I've not started reading it yet. I bought from Amazon the other day it's sort of a comic book guide to DNA. I can't remember the exact name of it, but essentially it's something like how DNA changed the world, and it's sort of like a visual document of the sort of science behind it and stuff like that. I love those sort of things. Just these quirky uses of the medium to just describe or explain different things. And I think it's done by two guys from like fairly sort of weighty American university that have done it. It's a serious bit of text, but in a cool visual form. So you should. Tax can be in comic book form.
The risk with that is that I don't really know much about it. I just know, like, I know that people. Sounds funny. Exactly, but I know that people always make this mistake that, like, oh, if you make over, I don't know, let's say if you make over £100, then they'll tax, and then they tax 40%, then you'll only make £60. It's like, no, if you make £101, then they'll take 60p. But anyway, that's kind of a whole soapbox. But anyway.
What's changed? I mean, I think you said you started doing the comic book art in 2017, did you say?
Yeah.
Even going back from when it was just kind of drawing on paper, what have you seen change with regards to technology? Because that's something that me and Matt often talk about on our show. How have you seen developments in technology in how it's impacted either in a positive way on your art? Have you changed your styles in that respect?
I mean, that's so when I was a kid, like, my mum would bring back, like, she'd basically steal some copy paper from work and just like pop it down in front of me and say, there you go, that's all your paper. And I'd just be drawing like biros on this cheap copy paper, and that was great. But then I think it was when I was kind of 13, maybe 14 is when I decided I want to try and do some digital art, because there was this weird thing where, this is going to sound really stupid and like maybe not even, I may not even be able to say it properly, but so obviously when you're coloring something in with like markers or, coloring pens or whatever, if you color this bit and then you color over it again, it's darker.
Yeah.
Right. So you can see that it's been colored in like with a pen. Yeah. And at that age, I had no idea how like comics and cartoons and all that had this like block of color that didn't look like it had been colored in with a pen.
Yeah.
And so it was when I discovered that like Photoshop exists and like Flash exists and all this stuff, it just blew my mind. And so I'm sitting there like trying to draw things with a mouse. And I eventually convinced my mum to get me like an old like Wacom tablet, which I think I might still have in the cupboard somewhere. But it's this ancient thing that didn't even have like pressure sensitivity or anything. And it's like, relatively speaking, like compared to what we have now for the same price, it's absolute rubbish. But it blew my mind. It was amazing. Yeah. Because obviously you just plug it in, you put it on your lap, and you could look at the screen, and just things would happen, which was just like it was like going into a whole new world for me. And so yeah, I think in that way, it's been good for me, because I mean, I am just a messy person anyway, so it's great to just have things digitally instead of like, oh no, I lost that page, what's happening, all this sort of stuff. So I think that's been good. And it also means that obviously through like the internet and everything, people can get more things out there, which is really good. It just means that like anyone can do it as well. Like, I mean, even if you're, I don't know, like, even if you're like a family doesn't have particularly much money or anything like that, you could still, like, I think there are drawing tablets out there for like as cheap as like 20 or 30 quid, and like they'll do the job. Like if you just want to try and make something, like just it's not too hard to try and scrape that together, even if you're on like a very sort of low income. Yeah. And if that's something you're passionate about, you can kind of scrape that together and have that outlet. Even if you're not showing it, if showing people something, it's an outlet. Yeah. And it means you don't have to keep buying like pens and paper and ink and paints and all that kind of stuff. That's the other thing. It cuts down on kind of regular costs of that sort of thing.
Does it take the pressure off of you, like in terms of drawing something digitally? If you're saying about having the expectation of, oh, it's got to be right. If you're doing it digitally, you can reverse pretty much everything that you've just done. Does that take the pressure off? Or does it does, yeah. First that you're constantly changing it again and again and again and again?
That's a good question. I think the biggest, I wouldn't even necessarily call it learning curve. The biggest thing that kind of happened to me when I started drawing digitally was that when I went back to drawing with paper, when I was like, this is like sort of 13, 14 years old, I would then like sit in front of a bit of paper and I'd draw something, get something wrong, and then I'd reach for Control Z. I'm like, wait, no, this is real life. That doesn't exist. It's like, okay, well, I guess this one's scrapped. Just chuck that one away. And the other thing that I didn't necessarily think of so much is like the zoom function. Like instead of having like you can really get into the nitty gritty and details and things. Part of being a good comic artist is like simplifying things and not going and being able to decide what needs more detail, because that needs to be focused on, what needs less. So that's kind of blends into the background a little bit, almost like a camera fade. But being able to zoom into these areas that you do want more detail on is so useful. Yeah. I recently got a couple of art books from some games. I got the Doom Eternal art book and the Cyberpunk 2077 one. Lovely. And yeah, they're both really gorgeous books. But I'll flick through them and I want to see like the details on that, but
it's so close.
Like, my face only gets here, and so I end up just like buying the Kindle versions and just zooming in. Like, okay, great, now I can blow it up to the size of the whole screen, and it's really great. There's a lot of really great things that have come from all the innovations in art tech and all that kind of stuff.
Do you still start though? I mean, going back to the comics that you're doing, do you still start with every idea and when you're being creative, does it start with a pencil and a bit of paper and then you move it over, or is now the first port of call going straight to digital?
It varies quite a lot, to be honest, especially depending on kind of what the project is. If it's something quicker, like if it's someone that just wants like a drawing of their brother when they went on a camping trip and like a little simple strip, then then I'll probably just do it straight onto the tablet, because there's not going to be a lot of complicated angles or any kind of complicated anatomy or anything like that. But when I'm doing the Secret Protectors, I do mix it up a little bit, and there's a bit of variation there, but I try to draw on A3, because for some reason, when I'm trying to do something more technical that has, because obviously in Guff Canyon is a lot more simple and stylized and cartoony, whereas Secret Protectors is still quite cartoony, but it's more towards the American comics end of the spectrum. And so when I'm doing something like that, for some reason, and maybe it's like the tactile sensation of like the pencil on the paper, or I have no idea what it is. For some reason, it always just comes out nicer if I do the pencils on paper with sort of physical medium and then scan it in and ink color on there. So yeah, it varies quite a bit.
How's with current circumstances? I think you touched upon it a little bit earlier, but with current circumstances and COVID, how has that impacted on what you do day to day?
Well, so initially it didn't have much of an effect, because I was doing little bits of kind of freelance work here and there, and but I was pretty much at home anyway. The only thing that changed was that I couldn't see my girlfriend for quite some time, which was unfortunate. But other than that, like in terms of my actual creative output, I think I did slow down on the Guff Canyon comics, which was more of a regular release before the lockdown. It stayed regular for a while, but then it kind of ground to a halt a little bit, just because there's just something quite draining about not being able to just like go out and see some friends or go to like 100%. Meet some other people and like so it did become a bit of that did drain me a little bit. But I think I do have more time to study. I've gone through a lot more. I've done some I've gone to New Masters Academy and various things like that to try and kind of work through those. Just having an extra time. The hard part is managing it and being more disciplined with it. That's where the tricky part comes in.
Do you feel that it's been, I was going to say about like social media, because from some of the other interviews that we've done, we've spoken to comedians, we've spoken to people within music. It has all become online, and I've seen you and Adam on doing interviews, plugging the comic, which have been awesome. But social media as well, like people trying to get their work out on other avenues like that. Is that something that you've seen increase with other artists that you follow?
Yeah. I think social media is very much like a double-edged sword for any kind of creative thing, because obviously it's great that you can get things out there, but you're now also competing with literally a billion people on Instagram or Twitter or any of those sorts of things, which just means that, I mean, no matter how good you are, there's always a bigger fish. And so so when you're sort of touring conventions and things, you can show people and they're like, oh, great. But when they'll be walking around, they'll see maybe 100 different people with all their comics, and because of the nature of the format, you've got a bit of time to have a look. But if you're scrolling on Instagram or YouTube or whatever like that, you just flick straight past. Like if it doesn't grab your attention, if it doesn't have something provocative or some violence or a pretty face on it or something, you just kind of scroll through. And I do as well. I don't kind of scrutinize every piece of art and think, oh, that's really interesting. And it almost, in a way, it feels more disposable. Yeah. Which is quite unfortunate. But then it's just a double-edged sword of trying to get things in front of people, really. I think I think YouTube has kind of become the hub of all creative industry, well, all sort of independent creative industry anyway. And so you have these YouTube channels, which I've seen a lot of art YouTubers starting out and going for years and years and years, who just get there are people who have done hundreds of videos who have, and their latest video pops up and say, oh, they posted a video 2 days ago. Oh, it has, less than 100 views. And this person is really plugging away at it, and it's really impressive. And their work is great, but people just scroll past it. And that's really kind of, I can imagine, quite disheartening for people. But I mean, that's kind of, I've thought about doing it a little bit, but I just couldn't couldn't keep it up really. But it's quite strange because there are a few art YouTubers that are really successful. Like there's Stroll with Jazza, and there's a lot of the animation channels and things like that, which do really good stuff. But when it's just really difficult because you kind of almost, the only thing you can really end up doing is teaching on there, because that's the kind of thing people are looking for. If you just put a thing on that, like, oh, here's me drawing this thing, it doesn't get a lot of traction. Even if you're like Jim Lee or someone, like he'll post something and it'll get, like, you think how big Jim Lee is. He has like however many hundreds of thousands or millions of followers on all these platforms. Jim Lee posts something and it just gets like rubbish numbers compared to that. I mean, it'd be good numbers for someone like me, but like for someone as gigantic and well known as him, it's just, it's crazy. It's just such a huge platform, and there's so much attention going everywhere and distraction, and it's all about just tricking people into staying on the site with what's going to engage them the most for the longest. And so if you've got a bit more of a chill thing or something like that, it doesn't really grab. I don't know. I mean, there might be a way, but let me know if you find it.
Me and Jay spoke about this. I mentioned sort of a question related to this, and it's, I follow a lot of artists on Instagram, because that's the main place that I put the art that I do on there. And you notice with a lot of the people, like really what you've just said, a lot of the people that are successful tend to very much to be of a particular style or a particular trend. And they seem to be very conscious of, I guess, being current. So so like, I don't know, used an easy example is you get lots of people that will do, I know, a variation of a very well-known cartoon character. So like they'll take The Simpsons and they'll twist it in a way that is sort of their own, but just a pop art sort of version of it, and so on. And it's almost like you're, it's fallen into that trap of sort of like feeding the beast of social media rather than self-expression, if you see where I'm coming from. Do you find that sort of distraction when you're looking at it, and maybe that sometimes in the back of your head you're thinking, well, maybe I'd get more likes if I did that, and it sort of kills that creativity a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, one of my favorite artists on Instagram is Koteri Inc., who does like the Kings of Nowhere comic and all sorts of stuff like that. And his art is amazing. His anatomy is both like incredibly accurate and incredibly expressive, but not in a kind of exaggerated cartoony way, in its own kind of exaggerated way, which is just really unique and fantastic. But he'll sort of draw like Goku and like Luffy and Naruto and things like that every now and then, which, that's fun to do. I mean, I'm not disparaging that in any way, but that's probably those are the things that are going to get picked up by the algorithm and are going to draw people to his feed. And so it does become this thing of, or it feels like it becomes this thing. I mean, I'm no expert. I don't have particularly many followers myself, but it becomes this thing of people who have something like you need something quickly recognizable, so that people don't keep scrolling and think, oh, that's like Goku's Orange Gi. Okay, great. That's Homer Simpson. Yeah, but in like a crazy style or something. And so, you do get that kind of thing. It's this. Yeah, you're right. It's the self-expression thing. It's like it's not self-expression as much as trying to churn things out to feed the beast. Yeah.
I guess to some extent, it's a dangerous game with social media, and it's the same for us as with our show. You want people to like it, and I think deep down, the most important person to like it is yourself, that you're proud of what you've done, and as long as you do, nothing else matters in my eyes. I mean, it depends what you're doing, the reason why you're doing it, but I mean, from the fans that you've got of the Secret Protectors in particular, and of your art, I mean, every like's welcome. Do you know what I mean? But at the same time, if you're enjoying what you're doing, that's got to be the most important thing.
That's a good. That actually made me think. So, I think there's something more satisfying about, like, if you were to make something, like, it's so hard to even remember what it was like before you had to post everything on Instagram. But I can. Okay, yeah, actually, no, that's a good example. So people haven't seen a lot of the new Secret Protector stuff, like the redone stuff and the issue 4 stuff. And so I haven't reached the point of putting that out yet. So having finished that and just having it here next to me in this new form, I think I'm genuinely a lot more pleased with, and just very proud of all of it. Having that is a lot more satisfying than posting it and getting X amount of likes. But the problem is, you make that and then you put it out, and as soon as you put it out, the satisfaction switches from being satisfaction in the thing to, oh, how many likes is it going to get? Like, you lose that, and it's really weird and really unfortunate, because like you want to get seen, but
of course,
that it definitely takes something away from it. Yeah, it's true.
Do you think that puts more importance on, like, just seeing you there getting the physical sort of copy of it and being really excited about that? Do you think that the way you can just throw something sort of carelessly digital out into the world, do you think that puts even more emphasis on the physical and making that even more important for you, seeing it in print?
Yeah, absolutely. I remember the first time I saw issue 1 in print. Even then, it was a bit of some of the bits near the end were a bit more rushed, to be honest. And so that's why a lot of them I've kind of touched up and improved quite a bit. But going back and seeing those, when we first got that printed off, it was just like a whole different beast. And I showed it to some of my friends, and they were like, "Oh yeah, we've seen this on like your iPad, but this is a completely different thing." Like, if it's just it's a completely different feeling, even though you're literally seeing the same thing in the same size on a screen compared to on a piece of paper. It's just worlds apart. And like, before I did that, I never would have anticipated that, because like, you read digital comics, like I'll read like Justice League on one of the apps, but if you pick up a paper copy, it's a different thing. But why? I mean, that's very strange. I mean, it's not even just the feel of it; it just looks different. Maybe it's the kind of RGB like screen lighting versus CMYK. There's a bit more range there, or depth, or something. I don't know. Maybe it looked better on OLED. Maybe then we wouldn't need to print stuff anymore. But yeah. I mean, I suppose the barrier then is with the printing thing. The barrier is just the price of everything, because even the big boys who are printing out like tens of thousands of copies a week or a month, or however often they print, however many they printing out these giant batches, they still have to be like, oh, sorry, we need to increase the price, please keep buying our comics. So when like me and Adam are ordering, like I say, when we ordered our batch of I can't remember what the batch size was, but just to get the comics, it was like, it was a lot. It was close to sort of $2,000, I think, and that's before we're factoring in like postage and all that sort of stuff. And we can't really sell them at cons or anything right now, so we've just got those ready for when things are a bit more normal, and for like postage and things, for like posting them out. Well, if we can figure out how to kind of get that going, because our big thing was doing cons and things. That was always kind of how we got the most attention, how we met people, how we met fans, how we met people who were like, so like we were kind of just getting to the point, this really nice point, where we would go to a con, and someone would come up and say, oh, I saw you at this other con, or oh, I saw you at this comic shop, and then they'd be really keen, and they'd be like, oh yeah, I want to buy the next issue, or like, oh, I want to buy some of the original art, or something like that, and they'd be really keen, really excited, and we'd have like a great conversation. And yeah, we were just kind of reaching that point before this kicked off, which is a shame. But it was a great place to be, and I'm sure hopefully they'll still be there when things go back to normal.
Well, that's what I was going to say, to kind of come full circle here on the interview. The future. What are your plans? What are your aspirations? Do you how long have you got on the current projects, and how do you think you can grow as an artist?
Yeah, I think the main thing I need to keep doing is just keep sticking to study regimens and things, really, which is a tricky thing. But in terms of kind of projects and things, I do want to. I feel like with Guff Canyon, I want to go in a bit of a different direction and have some like short stories and things. But on a bigger level, I do want to. So I've worked a lot with writers. So obviously they write the script, I do the art. Obviously that's how it works for when you work with a writer or an artist. But there's like I've never like written and drawn something myself and then gotten it printed, and that's kind of my big goal in, I suppose, the midterm, because obviously it'll take a while. the problem with that is like in the past. So I remember back when I was in uni, I did this, I think it was sort of like a manga style thing. I did this like 22, 23, 24 page manga chapter, and I got it all finished and I really liked it. And then I got to the end and thought, actually, I've gotten better. So then I scrapped all that and then I did it all again.
Oh my God.
I mean, you're seeing a pattern here. I did it all again. And then by the time I'd done it all again, I knew I could still do it better, but I thought, okay, this is done. But then I had a different idea, so I just went off to do something else. And that's why for me, working with a writer is really, really useful, because you've got someone you're accountable to and someone who has finished their part of the work. So I can't be like, oh, what if actually this character was completely different? Or what if this story beat didn't happen here? Or what if... But my problem is that I'll write out like four issues of a script and give it to myself, and I'll go through it and be like, oh, no. If I change this, then I'll have to change everything down the line. But okay, I'll change this and all that. Whereas if there's something about receiving it from someone else that makes it this kind of this like holy manuscript that you can't change. Yeah. And I do still change it. Like when I think there's something a bit off, I'll, my thing is, it must be a bit of a pain to work with me, to be honest, because I'm not the kind of person that. So if I see something in a script, I won't change like massive things. I won't like, this character goes to Sainsbury's. Oh no, actually, he should get his head cut off by a dragon. No, So I'll like if something feels a little bit off, maybe like an angle that feels off, or maybe if something is one panel but actually it'd be better as two, or maybe there's a bit of dialogue that I don't feel quite works right. I'll just change it and then I'll show it to the person when it's all done. I won't ask them. I'll just change it because, like, I can show them when it's done and they can say, actually, that was an important bit of dialogue. Please change it back. And I'm like, yep, sorry, my bad. And like people are okay with it. I mean, that's just part of the. I mean, even though like writer and artist are obviously separate parts of the process, there's still a lot of collaboration that goes into it. In my experience, maybe I'm sure there are writers out there that are kind of, oh, no, my script is law, and like you're not allowed to change a single word, and that's fair enough, to be honest. Like as long as that's communicated up front. But with a lot of people I worked with, you in a lot of cases, like you sit down, they've got the idea, and you kind of hammer it out together. They may have like, here's the beginning, middle, and end. How do we get through those? And like some people who haven't worked in comics before and all that kind of stuff, you can just sit down and you can really make something together. And like part of that is like once you design the characters, you sort of know who they are a bit better. Like when you can see them, their personality might be different from how it was when it was just words on the page, if that makes sense. Yeah, and. Yeah, so it's a great sort of collaborative process. But going back to the question, I do want to kind of try and make something on my own from start to finish, even if it's just like a sort of like a 20-page sort of floppy. Just, I mean, that's a lot anyway. I say that's a lot to do when when you've got other obligations. But even if it's just like something of that sort of length, I do want to kind of make something start to finish that I'm proud of, that I could say, this is mine. I've made this whole thing, and that's kind of the goal. I'm thinking like a sort of dystopian sci-fi kind of thing, but trying to avoid too many cliches. But
well, when you do, Ben, we'll have to get you back on the show to plug it.
Sounds good.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. We really appreciate you taking the time out in your busy schedule. But where can people find you on social media?
Well, it's been great. Thanks for having me. But so they can find me. I'm more on Instagram than other places, although that you may not have found that to be the case, in that I've been quite bad at answering your messages. But so I'm mostly in terms of posting things. I'm mostly on the Guff Canyon Instagram, which is Guff Canyon Comic. So that's GUFF Canyon Comic, one word. That's where I post the kind of daily strips. Not daily strips. No, not even close to daily strips. I think I posted like 2 last month. But where I post the strips occasionally. But yeah, that's kind of the main place. And I mean, the comic Secret Protectors is at secretprotectors.co.uk, which is nice and straightforward. You can pre-order Volume 1, which is out at the beginning of December. Yeah.
Thanks, Ben. Take care.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that as much as we did. Don't forget, if you did enjoy it, please like, subscribe on whatever platform you're watching and listening on, because in that way you won't miss out on any future episodes we put out.
Yeah, and don't forget to follow us on all social media platforms as well. We're on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and give us a follow, and you'll be able to keep up to date with all of the latest episodes and posts that we put out there. But thank you for listening and watching.
And we'll see you next episode.